Good afternoon. How's everybody? Well, great. Oh, good. That's good. Well, I'm sure that you're feeling a little tired, maybe a little sweaty, but we're happy to have you this afternoon and relax. You're in a nice, cool place. My name is Lori White. I am the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and this session is titled Letting Go. So, by show of hands, how many of you are dropping off your first or only kid? Oh, wow, that I think looks like that's most of you. And any of you dropping off your last child? All right, so you all who are dropping off your last can give advice to the folks who raise their hand saying they're dropping off their first or their only. And those who are dropping off their last, I'm sure you've already figured out what you're going to do with your kids' room and all of those other kinds of things. So we're certainly happy that you have entrusted Washington University with your children. And we are certainly committed to making sure that they have the best possible experience that they can have here at Washington University. This session is titled Letting Go, and we are going to focus on what you can expect as your student navigates through the college years. We're going to give you some information and tools for letting go while continuing to support your student. And our format is that we're going to have a short presentation followed by an opportunity for you to ask some questions of myself, of our speaker, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, and we also have two wonderful students who will be a part of the panel. So before I introduce our speaker, let me say a few thoughts about what I think it is that you should be thinking about as you prepare to leave tomorrow. The first is thinking about that while the college experience is certainly going to have a range of influence on your student, there isn't anything that we can do that's going to fundamentally change your student's character. That's something that your students have already gotten from you. So I want you to be confident that, in the words of my grandmother, that you have raised your children right, and that they will consider, as they experience the opportunity to make decisions on their own, what their parents would think. So I want you to rest assured that the wonderful young men and women that you have already raised are going to make some really good decisions while they are here. The second thing is that we can't legislate good communication between you and your student. And there's some legal requirements about what we can and can't share related to your student's experience here, because we and the federal government consider your students to be adults, whether or not you believe that to be true yet. But it's been my experience that regardless of the issue, those students who already have a good relationship with their parents, and I'm sure that's all of the students that you all have raised, are going to eventually tell you what's going on with them. And just know that we're certainly permitted to be in contact with you if we're ever worried about your students' overall health and safety. But again, my experience has been that when students are struggling with something, even if they don't tell you right away, they're going to tell you eventually. And so I want you to rest assured that at any point in time, if we really do feel like a student needs a particular extra attention, if their health, self, or well-being is at risk, we're going to pick up the phone and we're going to call you. And then the last thing is I want you to think about, unless you want your student living with you until they're 30 or 40 or 50, please give them the space to figure out things on their own. I certainly know it's hard for you as parents to resist the urge to step in and fix things for your kids. My mother still wants to try to step in and fix things for me, and I'm certainly way past the age where my parents should be trying to do that on my behalf. And I know certainly how hard it is for you to see your kid hurt, disappointed, and frustrated. But please know that they really need the agency to try and solve their own problems and issues, and that doing that is really a part of the growing up process and a part of you letting go, hence the title of this session. So let me introduce my wonderful colleague, Dr. Karen Coburn. And let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Coburn. She is currently the senior consultant in residence at Washington University. She's also the co-author of 3 books, including Letting Go, A Parent's Guide to Understanding the College Years. And she recently, in 2016, revised and completely updated the Letting Go publication for its 6th edition. With over 500,000 copies in print, including a Chinese edition published in Beijing, this best-selling classic is based on research and extensive interviews, and it provides parents an inside view of college life today and describes students' predictable stages of development through the college years, from admission to graduation. Letting Go is recommended by numerous colleges and universities in the U.S. as well as high schools. And as one reviewer put it, in the same way that What to Expect When You're Expecting seemed to be the Bible for parents when they were pregnant 18 or so years ago, Letting Go is the go-to book as parents prepare to send their children off and help them navigate the always exciting and sometimes turbulent years of college. Dr. Coburn is a frequent guest on radio and television shows and is featured regularly in national newspapers and magazines. She's a popular speaker at conferences and educational institutions, and she's delivered keynote addresses for many organizations and schools in the U.S. and abroad. Dr. Coburn has a long history here at Washington University. She served previously as the director of our Career Center, Associate Dean for Freshman Transition, and Assistant and Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. She's currently Senior Consultant and Resident. She's a counselor, advisor, teacher, administrator, and my very good friend. She's also deeply committed to supporting and enhancing the experience of undergraduates. So please join me in welcoming Dean Karen Levin Coburn to the podium.
Thank you, Lori, and welcome to all of you. It's been a busy day. I can imagine that a lot of you just welcome the thought of sitting in an air-conditioned room, and maybe you'll pay a little bit of attention to this, but I understand if you sort of space out a little bit. It's been a day that's probably been fraught with excitement and emotion, and as a matter of fact, it's probably been a summer that has been fraught with excitement and emotion. So a lot of you probably have been feeling nostalgic, whether this is your first child, your only child, your last child, your middle child, about this particular son or daughter leaving for school. And I would imagine that some of you have been looking at old photographs and telling old stories, maybe embarrassing your child a bit, feeling both happy and sad, but students are often feeling the same thing. And though you may have had feelings of anticipation and anxiety about this departure, feeling nostalgic, wondering how time could have gone so fast, some of your sons and daughters have probably been acting in ways that have left you looking forward to this day and thinking it couldn't come soon enough, because they're feeling the same ambivalence you are. Excited, happy, but also anxious, wondering if it'll all work out. Will they make friends? And so I see ambivalence as sort of the essence of what is going on right now. This is a wonderful opportunity. It's wonderful for them, but there's a push-pull between being connected to their old friends, making new friends, leaving home, staying home. For those of you, are any of you from this area, from St. Louis? I don't see anybody. A couple. My experience with students who are from St. Louis, and they're a minority of the students here, is that you probably won't see them any more than the parents of students who are from California or even another country. They may come home when they're really tired of the wonderful food we have here. Yes, it's wonderful, but it's not the same as yours. So one of the things that I would like to also say is this morning, as you moved in, I imagine that most students looked excited and they were cheering, and it all looks pretty idyllic, and the campus certainly looks idyllic. And you have been bombarded with idyllic images throughout the whole college search. All those view books, all those websites, everybody always looks happy. Nobody is ever alone in those view books unless they are sitting under a tree, preferably in the fall with orange leaves, reading a volume of Keats or Shelley. No one ever looks bedraggled, depressed, exhausted. All the classes look scintillating. You never see a picture of a class with a professor standing up there, and you see it from the back, where students are either on their phones or falling asleep because they're so exhausted. It all looks perfect. So one thing, if you take nothing else away from this session that I'd like you to remember is the school that your son or daughter chose not to go to or didn't get into will always remain that very perfect school in the view books. This place, as wonderful as it is where real life is happening for them. And with real life comes all kinds of ups and downs. Occasionally, a student will have buyer's remorse and say, I should have gone to that other perfect school. Just remember that the ups and downs that are predictable, and you're going to hear about them, will happen anywhere. And my feeling is that you could not have, your sons and daughters could not have picked a better time to come to this university. As Dr. White said, I have been here a long time. I think it's 40 years since I walked in the door of this place. And I can honestly say there has never, ever been a better time to come to Washington University. This has always been a terrific place. Some of you may be alums. I've seen many wonderful classes, but the things that are going on here now are so exciting, and the people who are here are truly committed to making this an extraordinary experience for your daughters and sons. Some of the challenges that are predictable you will hear about from our students, their ups and downs, but remember that all of the students here were at the top of their classes. They were at the top of all kinds of things. And, if you think about it, you don't have to be a mathematician to say if you were in the upper 10% of their class, everybody here was probably in the upper 10% of their class or close to it. So they come here, and 90% of them are going to be in a different position here because they're surrounded by people who are just like them. And they may feel challenged in ways that are new, academically, or getting into an a cappella group, or being chosen to be on a particular team. So they will be challenged and stretched. And along with being stretched and challenged comes stress. So isn't that what you're sending them here for? You're not sending them here to be stressed, but that is a byproduct of being challenged and stretched and having to grow. I think that also you will hear about the supports that are here. One of the things that I think is most important for students to learn is to learn how to use and seek out the many resources we have. Yes, there are lots of people on site. There are advisors and there are RAs and there are WUSAs. But no one is going to be quite like you. No one is going to say, you've gone to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 nights in a row. You're looking really tired. I think you should go to sleep earlier tonight. They're not going to say that. They're not even going, the roommate is not going to be concerned about how tired the roommate is. The students are going to have to learn to regulate their own schedule, their own time, and that is one of the biggest challenges for students. Because at 2 o'clock in the morning on a residence hall floor, I can guarantee you there are a lot more people and it's a lot more exciting than it is in your house. So, that's one of the challenges, and we all know, and the students will hear about the effect that lack of sleep will have on them. And, everything that you're going to hear here today and tomorrow, they're going to hear too, extensively. So, what about you? What is your role now? First of all, I want to say your role is finding the balance between staying connected and letting go. And of course, it's so much easier to stay connected now than it's ever been before. The challenge is how to limit that to the point where your child will grow. Now, you're all experts on trying to find the balance between when do I sort of actively help this child and when do I think, okay, my child, my son or daughter is going to learn how to do this themselves. From that very first moment that you stood over a baby's crib and decided, do you remember those days? Do I pick him up or let him cry himself to sleep? Do I carry her around or do I just plop her down? Do I feed him or don't I let him, wait until it's more, he just ate, wait a little bit. Every moment you have done this, do I say, don't cross the street by yourself? Well, at some point you had to let go of that hand. You weren't holding your child's hand when he or she went to high school. So you are experts and you've navigated this without even thinking of it. And that's what you are going to do now. Navigate between being there and letting go. What is your role? More than anything, your role is to listen and be supportive. One of the reasons we have you here to learn about all the resources is that you can act as a coach. When you say to your daughter or son, there are these great study groups. Have you joined one? And they'll say, well, how do you know about that? Or thinking about which course to take or whether or not to drop a course, you can say, have you talked to your 4-year advisor? It's much better to do that than for you to try to decide and give advice because the people here who are on site really know more than you will in terms of what are the options that are available, and then they can consult with you. Even though we said we have all these supports, I will add one thing. If you are ever truly concerned about something that your son or daughter is telling you, and you're worried that your child seems depressed or is having a really, really hard time, then it may be time to pick up the phone and call one of us. And Rob Wild will be the person who will tell you how to get in touch with him. Because even though, as Lori said, we can't tell you specific things about your child, you can tell us, and then we will take a look to see what's going on. There have been times when I've been very pleased that a parent has called. It's finding that balance. In terms of how much you call them, I think that depends on what you work out with your daughter or son. I do think when you're calling, the question is, why are you calling? Are you calling because you're feeling lonely? Or are you calling because you haven't heard from your son or daughter in a long time and you just want to check in and see how things are? The number of phone calls, if a parent called me 7, 8, 10 years ago and said, my daughter is calling every day, sometimes twice a day, do you think that's a problem? I would say, oh, yeah, that really does sound like a problem. Today, I would ask a very different question of you, which would be, tell me about the calls. If your child is calling and asking you to make decisions, to do things for him or her, that's really different from walking across campus, I just had a great class, or just wanting to dump and complain, oh, I think I failed this class. I'm so tired. I'm so miserable. And then they click off the phone, and I see them, I hear this all the time. They wave to their friend, hey, how are you doing? What, you going to the party tonight? And you're left sitting there feeling your day's been ruined totally. And so think about why they're calling. If they're just calling to check in or texting to check in, I wouldn't worry about it. If they're asking you to pick their courses or tell them what to do with their roommate, you can coach them about who to ask here. Okay, I want to make sure we have time for our students and for you to ask questions. So I want to leave you with an image to hold in your mind about this balance between letting go and staying connected. One of the things that I failed to mention in terms of my qualifications, like you, I am a parent. I have now sent 2 children off to college. I haven't actively done it myself, but my son has sent his daughter off to college. I also, like you, brought up small children. When they were small, I took them to the park, as you probably did. And I think the park bench is a good image for your role then and now. When you took them to the park, what they needed was for you to sit on the bench and be there when they needed you. There were always those parents who were there in the sandbox. If a kid took a shovel away from them, the parent stepped in, took the shovel back, refrained from hitting the other child over the head with the shovel, but did everything for them. Then on the other extreme were the parents who were on their phones, not paying any attention, as their child ran in front of a swing and somebody else had to rescue them from getting hit in the head. What your child needed then was for you to be a presence on the bench, to be there when they needed you. And what they need from you now is for you to be there on that virtual park bench, to be there when they need you, to respond to their calls, to respond to their emails, when they ask you questions, but not to be hovering. So letting go is really finding the balance between staying connected and letting them fly. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Rob Wild, and I'll embarrass him a little bit to tell you that I've known him since he was a sophomore here. I won't say anything else about him.
Thank you, Karen. That was, what, 2 summers ago that I was a sophomore? Right. Yeah. So thank you, Karen. So again, my name is Rob Wild. I'm the Dean of Students here at Washington University. And while I'm kind of giving my introduction, why don't I have our 2 students and Dr. White come back up on stage and get settled for our questions. But as Dean of Students, I work very closely with the First Year Center. That is the wonderful team of people that have helped welcome all of our new students and families here today. I send a newsletter. I have a letter that goes out in a newsletter that you should have all received from me this summer called Family Ties. If you haven't received it, you can sign up to receive it on the First Year Center's website. And Family Ties is our way of communicating with all of you, all of the things that are going on, not just this year, but through all 4 years of your students' time at Washington University. And always at the bottom of my message, and I always say something related to the time of the year that it is, but always at the bottom of my message, I put my contact information. So when Karen is saying, if you have a problem, reach out to Rob Wild, and you're saying, yes, right, that, you know, this is a big place, I put my email in there, and you can email me or call me anytime. So there's that. Okay, the other thing I just want to say, like Karen, I am a parent. I have 4 children. My children are not quite to college age yet. I have 2 in high school, and this summer I experienced something many of you probably have experienced in the last couple of years, which is that my son got his driver's license and started driving this summer, which I have to say is the most single terrifying moment of my parenting to this time. And then we got to this weekend, and I'm thinking about all of you, and I realized driving is nothing compared to sending someone to college. So I congratulate you for getting your children to this point, and I look forward to working with you on this transition. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. If I could have our two students, what we're going to do in this session, and if I could have you guys put the next slide up. We're going to try to moderate questions a little bit. So the whole idea here is for you all, if you have questions, rather than pass a mic around, to text them into this website, which it looks complicated. It's very easy if you have a smartphone or an iPhone, just to put in your browser in that website. And there's some very simple instructions to text in a question. And I invite you to text in any questions. I'm going to do the very difficult technological transition of pulling up my laptop and trying to read those questions and ask them to our panelists. But before we do that, let me have our two wonderful students who volunteered to be with us today introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves. If you guys could talk a little bit about where you're from, what you're studying at Washington University, what your role is if you're a student leader, because I know you both are student leaders, and that will give you a sense of who is here with us from our student body. So Mao, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I'm Mao. I'm from Mexico City. I'm currently majoring in computer science with a minor in bioinformatics, and I'm on the pre-nursing track. I am currently an RA for upperclassmen, so I'm off campus in some apartments. But last year I was a WUSA for first-year students in HERD. Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I am a senior this year studying biochemistry on the pre-med track, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I was one of the idyllic students moving in today at Park Mud Residential College, where I am a residential advisor, and I was also a WUSA last year, so I did get to work very closely. No, actually, no, that was 2 years ago. Time flies so quickly when you're here. So 2 years ago, I was a WUSA, and last year I was also a residential advisor, but those are my involvements on campus currently.
Okay, so still having some technology problems, but I do have a question here that the question, actually it's a question that I just answered a little bit, which is how do I find out information about what is happening on campus during the year? I have an answer to that, but I'll let my panelists take a stab at it. You want me to go? Okay. So again, I mentioned Family Ties. We also have a brand new website, families.woostel.edu. And the families.woostel, Woostel, by the way, I've been explaining this all day because we all just like to say that really fast and I'll explain it. Woostel is W-U-S-T-L, Washington University, St. Louis. And that all of your students' email addresses will be a Woostel address. But that's a great place. And then, like I said, the Family Ties is a quarterly newsletter that comes out that has information.
Add if there's any critical incident that happens on campus that I think that parents should be aware of, you'll receive communication from me. So make sure that we have your email addresses. That's typically the way in which we would communicate with you.
Great. Okay, let's see here. Here's a question. I am worried about campus safety. What should I be sharing with my student about staying safe on and off campus? And then how will I stay informed about incidents that occur on campus?
That would be Chief Glenn. So we have our police chief here, Mark Glenn. We had a feeling we'd get a question about campus safety. So Chief Glenn, if you would offer a few words in response to the question, that would be fabulous.
Good afternoon. So this is a question I get a lot this time of year, believe it or not. There's a couple things we like to tell our new students, and reinforcing the message from your end is really an effective way that they start to learn this. One thing I like to tell parents is campus is open and rolling pretty good till about 2 in the morning, because I always have parents ask, should they get an escort at 9 o'clock when they're leaving the library and going back? And that's usually, most don't do it. But we do have escorts available to get them to and from, even though there's a lot of student movement. If they could lock their doors, not prop open their doors, things like that. We have a top 10 list that's on our website. It's police.wustl.edu, and there goes that Wustl again, WUSTL.edu. It helps them, and that's something we're going to be talking with them about. When they go off campus, it's a little different. There's multiple municipalities in the area that they have to kind of coordinate or navigate through. But we always try and tell people if they're making trips off campus to have a plan to get back to campus, because that's generally what we see, especially with our new students, is they want to go experience St. Louis, and then they get out and they don't have a way to get back. So having a plan to get back. And the last thing we always tell them, when in doubt, call the police department. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 935-5555. We'll be more than happy to help them with any issues. If they're off campus, we can help with local municipalities and make sure that they, can get around and that they're safe. But when in doubt, if they call, we'll be more than happy to help them out. And then the last one was information, right, Rob?
How do you find out information about it?
So how do you find out about information? So there's a couple different ways. But probably the easiest way is to go to our website. Again, it's police.wustl.edu. On our website, we maintain a crime log on campus. So you will see every crime that's reported to the police department. It's listed there. You'll be able to see some of the details about it. The other thing that's on there is our memos and our alerts. So if there's an incident on campus that requires an emergency response, you can always get the details on that from our website. Additionally, we do put out communication to our off-campus incidents that occur off campus that are in the proximity of the university, and we'll keep a log of those on. So you can always go in and see what emergency communications or what alerts that we're putting out. And again, if there's a question, you can always call the police department and we'll help get you the answer. Thanks,
Chief
Rob.
Glenn, I have a follow-up for you. How large is our police force and what areas do we patrol?
So we just recently expanded our police department. We're at 44 officers. And people always say, boy, that's a big department. They wouldn't expect it. You have to remember our community population is 30,000 plus. That's a lot of people. Now, we have them congregated during the day when you talk faculty and staff. So we have a fairly large department here on campus. We also patrol off campus in the neighborhoods surrounding campus. So we divide that force up a little bit to make sure we provide 24-hour day coverage both on and off campus.
Okay, here is a question that might be good for the students to answer, either for yourselves or for students that you've worked with over the last couple of years. What are some of the challenges that you see students face in their first semester and in their first year at Washington University?
So I think for me, it was definitely the academics. Senior year of high school was kind of a party year for me. I worked hard, but it was definitely nothing compared to the academic rigor at WashU. So it was kind of figuring out my schedule and how to succeed in classes. And WashU provides a million resources for students, and at times it can seem overwhelming that there's so many resources and you have to figure out which ones to use and which ones not to use. I think personally for me, also emotionally, a hard transition was leaving my parents. Because my mom's American, she lives in Mexico City, and my parents are divorced, and she's alone, and I'm her only child. So just kind of actually leaving her completely alone with no family, a couple of friends, her only son is leaving the country. That was hard, so yeah, that was one of the hardest things for me. How I got through that was just keeping in contact with my mom. As you mentioned, it's kind of setting that let go, tug with your parents. Also from a student's perspective, it's kind of maybe not calling them too much and making them worry about what's going on with you, but also you as parents realizing that we're in good hands, we're smart kids, we know what we're doing at the end of the day. And And sometimes I would roll my eyes at my mom like texting me every day and be like, ah, here she goes again. But at the end of the day, that's like what I went to bed with, and like that feeling that they care. But yeah, it's been a process, but after first semester, I think we figured out our relationship and how to transition from me being at home to here at college.
Yeah, I would really just like to echo everything that Mao just said. I am also an only child, so leaving my parents at home, I don't know, maybe they actually enjoyed it quite a lot, but they've gone on quite a few vacations since I've been here. But I do think that was a hard part of coming here. But also in my experiences working with first-year students, I think one thing that comes up quite often is roommate conflicts, because this is the first time for many students that they'll be living with someone completely new and that they might not have chosen to live with. And so being in an environment in such close proximity with people you've never met before can sometimes bring up issues. And I think for situations like that, it's really important just to have very open communication right from the very beginning, and just to establish how you guys are going to live cohesively together and be successful in this new environment together.
Okay, all right.
I can also add,
ahead, yeah.
I feel like a lot of our students have imposter syndrome. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's kind of like that sense of not feeling like you belong. I had relatively low SAT scores, so when I got accepted into WashU, I was like, no way, this is a mistake. But it is a very holistic process, and I think most of us come to face that we are here for a reason, that we were chosen. And if your student is facing that, just kind of reaffirm that they were chosen and the university didn't really make a mistake by accepting them here.
We definitely did not make a mistake.
Yeah, definitely not.
Okay, all right, this is kind of really changing gears. Again, this one might be for the students, but how is the food on campus, and where should we take our son to dinner tomorrow night?
Yeah, okay. Well, of course, for those living on the South 40, there's always the Bears Den. We call it BD. There are a lot of options there, and there are also many options around campus. They're all quite good. We also have the Del Mar Loop, which is very close to campus. You can walk there. There are a lot of great restaurants there. And also, if you have a car with you, there's Clayton, downtown Clayton, which is very nearby as well. And I believe actually the First Year Center has a dining guide, and there are different restaurants for many different locations in St. Louis there, and you can check that out if you would like to find somewhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, food's amazing for college. Well, for any food, but for college food specifically, I definitely didn't starve. That's all I can say.
Okay, will the university call me if there is a problem with my student? Dr. White kind of covered that in her remarks, but I don't know if you want to say any more about that.
Sure, I would just like to reiterate that certainly if we think that your child's health and safety is at risk, we will call you. Typically, if that is the situation, I would talk with the student first to say, I think this is a situation serious enough that you should involve your parents, hoping that most students would take the initiative, to call their parents on their own, and most will. But every now and then, for whatever reason, a student may not want to do that. And if we really feel like it's necessary, we certainly will be in touch with you. Cherie or Dr. Dewar, do either one of you want to comment? I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues. Dr. Cherie LeBlanc is the Executive Director of the Habit Student Health Center, and Dr. Kirk Dewar is Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Health and Wellness. Dr. LeBlanc is a physician. Dr. Dewar is a counseling psychologist, and so would either one of you like to respond to the question?
Sure, parents, welcome. Good to have you here, first of all. It's a pleasure to have you come to campus and take such a vested interest in your students and making sure that they're in good hands. And I rest assured that everybody at the university is doing a very good job trying to take care of their students. To reiterate what Dr. White said, if there's a concern that we have about your students, whether they're in or classrooms or meeting with Dr. Wild, we're going to reach out to you if we feel like that the circumstances permit that and warrant that. One last piece, if they're in the counseling center, and one of the questions that I would give you, I've got 2 students that I've sent off to college, and as a pro tip, if you're wondering if your student needs to go into counseling, the answer is yes, because you usually don't think of that until it's been down the road a little bit. And the students coming into the counseling center are a whole group of students that have anything from significant concerns to issues that they want to be able to talk through. Make sure that you get them into the counseling center as early as possible. And if there's some concerns that we have with those students, rest assured that we're going to take precautions to make sure that they're safe.
All right, this next one might be for the students. How often do you speak to your parents, and how do you do that? Text, FaceTime, phone call?
I think it depends. When I was first starting college, I called them quite a bit, and also FaceTime and text. Well, actually, I guess something that my mom had me do starting my senior year of high school is just to send her a text every morning. She just tells me to say yo. And so I've done that every day since high school or senior year of high school, so she just knows that I'm alive here. But other than that, I would call them quite a bit at the beginning of my time here, and it would slowly taper off a little bit depending on if I had a lot of tests going on. But actually last year when I was a junior, I had a lot of stuff going on and I was really overwhelmed just trying to figure out how I want to get to my next steps in life. And I called them almost every day, and I would FaceTime them a lot. And yeah, it was that, yeah, I usually FaceTime them, text them, yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning of freshman year, I used to call him about 2 to 3 times per week. I Skype with my mom, and I use WhatsApp with my dad. But then midterms hit, and like you don't see it coming, and it just seems like it never ends. So there was a period there where I didn't speak to them like on the phone for 3 weeks, 1 month at a time. But after that like first midterm period, I realized that I did have to talk to them more. Because, yeah, I mean, I did miss them. And I'm sure they missed me. But, like, you don't realize it in the moment. You're just so busy in midterms that you don't have that time to think and process. So after that, I've made it a goal to, and I've kept up with it for the past 1.5 years, to talk with them once per week, like FaceTime, and then, like, we text every day.
Karen, would you talk a little bit about some of the calls parents might receive and how they might respond to those?
Right. Well, first I just want to say, when you were talking, it made me think of my own son's freshman year. This was when I was thinking of writing this book, and so I was very into dealing with parents. So I purposely didn't call him. And finally one night he called and he said, Mom, how come you never call me? All the other kids' parents call. So, you know, you can carry it too far, this letting go thing. But I think, Lori, you're trying to find out like what kind of calls they might get?
Well, I was thinking about in some of the sessions Karen and I have done together, she's often had students do skits
Right.
where a student will call their mom or their dad and be very emotionally distraught about a grade that they got on a test or a breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend and get the parent all emotionally worked up.
Right.
And then, you know, they don't hear from them for 2 weeks later, and then they, you know, mom or dad says, well, what happened? Oh, I'm fine. I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
So,
Or, you know, they can call about, and I can remember one student did a skit where she talked about this guy, I think I'm in love, and this is, you know, like the second week of school, and the parents are thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on? And I remember she said, oh, this guy, Dave, he's so, I think this is the one. And so 2 weeks later, the parents are talking, and the student said, Dave? Who's Dave? So, you know, there's a little drama that you can just expect, and before you panic, just give it a little time. And as I said, I do think also that you're probably used to this very often. Students feel comfortable sort of dumping their anxieties or their worries on parents because, after all, you're their parents. And after they do that, they feel better. But then, how do you feel? And I just think before you panic, just give it a little time and wait till that next phone call, or just check in with them by email, because sometimes it's just a way for them to release all the things. So much is going on at once, and they're not going to dump on their roommate, but you're very convenient.
Okay, this next question kind of follows on to something Mao was talking about, but I am worried about my son and the relationship. Sorry, let me give this one. I'm worried about my son and who he should turn to if he is struggling academically. What resources are available?
I mean, like I said, there's 1,000 resources, and it feels overwhelming initially because you feel like you have to try them all, because if you're not, then you're not like taking full advantage of the expensive tuition or just like everything that you've done to get us here. But it is finally about figuring out, and you have like, yeah, there's the RAs, the WUSAs for first years, and they can guide you to, or well, guide the students to the proper resources. And I guess from the parents' perspective, like reassure them that they can try something, and if it doesn't work for them, they can try the next thing. And just on a point that was touched on before, that we do tend to dump on our parents, and I guess a suggestion would be just be empathetic. Don't try to like troubleshoot everything that we tell you. Sometimes we're just calling you to say like, damn, I had a bad week. Don't go and be like, oh, well, did you try this or that? Just kind of be understanding, and that's, I guess, where the parent-child relationship kind of becomes more of a friendship, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. There are really great resources for first-year students and, of course, other students as well. I think, like Mao said, RAs and WUSAs are really great because they've obviously been through the entire process themselves, and I'm sure most of them have also experienced struggles. So having their advice and seeing how they got through those difficulties is really helpful, and that personally helped me a lot when I was a first-year student as well.
A couple things I would add is tomorrow the academic divisions each will have a session for parents, and students will also attend a session with the academic divisions later on in the week. And that'll be an opportunity for each academic division to review some of the resources, which would also include, in addition to the student peer resources, faculty members. We always encourage students to really connect with their faculty members and take advantage of faculty member office hours. We also have an academic mentoring program through the Learning Center, which you passed by probably a couple of times when you're walking back and forth from here to the South 40. So I would also encourage students to take advantage of that. And students here, I was talking to a first-year student yesterday and asked her why she decided to come to Washington University. And she said, I know the students here are really smart, and I also know they're very collaborative. And so there are always students who are either might be in your student's class who are willing to be part of a study group, or an older student who has taken the class before who would be willing to spend time supporting your student who might be struggling with the class. So students here are really good about helping one another out.
Okay.
Excuse me, for some of us, the app is not working, so we're not able to ask our questions.
Yeah, mine's having trouble too. So
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I hear that resource analysis, can somebody say?
Yeah, I was about to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
go ahead. You want to do that?
Yeah, so WUSA stands for Washington University Student Associate, and they're usually sophomores, and they're assigned to the residencies of freshmen, and they go there at least once a week and they hold hours, and they're basically a support system for freshmen with like transitioning. They're mostly an academic resource, so they're the people that are mostly there to point freshmen to whether it be a study session or a professor or a student group. Yeah, so that's what Washington University Student Associate is. And RAs are residential advisors, so they supervise mostly the like living aspect of students, but they're also there, and we're very trained on like mental health resources, all the academic resources, so we can also point them to all of that.
And thanks for asking that question. We use a lot of acronyms, and we need to do a better job of making sure that everybody understands what the acronyms stand for. So appreciate the question.
And I do have to ask a housekeeping question. Are you all having technology problems? Because I have 3 more questions, and then mine has crashed. So the best laid plans. We're good at Washington University about rolling with things. Would you all mind if I ask the 3 questions that had been submitted, and then I'll do my best in the remaining to call on people? Is that okay? Okay. If you'll just bear with me. Okay. I have read about changes in the Title IX process from the government. What does the university do to prevent and respond to sexual assault?
So the government, so Title IX, those of you who are about my age probably know Title IX as gender equity with respect to sports. Title IX also refers to making sure that we have an equitable educational experience for all of our students, including responding to reports of sexual assault. So the government does require us, when a sexual assault has been reported to us, to respond in some way. That means providing resources for students who may report a sexual assault, making sure that we educate students to reduce the incidence of sexual assault on campus, and if a student wants to go forward with an adjudication process, making sure that we have a process to respond to that. Anyone who's sexually assaulted we always encourage students to report to the police. If it's happened on campus, they would be reporting to our police. If it happens off campus, outside of our police jurisdiction, they would have to report that to that local police agency. And a student can do one, both, or neither. They can decide they want to report it to us, and they can decide they want to go forward with an campus adjudication process. They can decide that they don't want to. They can decide they want to report it to the police, or they can decide that they don't want to do that. But regardless, we will provide confidential and supportive resources to students. We have a very detailed Title IX website, and if you want to know more about our process and the resources and what we're required to do, I encourage you to type in Title IX at the WSTL browser. You'll find quite a bit of information about that. And then lastly, one of the required workshops for all students is focused on understanding our Title IX requirements, expectations, resources, support, et cetera. So all of our students will be going through that process this week. It's called The Date. So you might hear your students talking about that.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question that I was able to get, and then I'm going to call on the audience. I am worried about my daughter's roommate. What happens if they don't get along? That's never happened.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that happens quite a lot. And I think there are always ways for your student to move if that really ends up being what they want. But also as adults now, I think that one part of our residential community goals is to be able to work through conflicts with roommates when they do arise. And of course, RAs are there to help mediate and talk through things as well. And also, when they start living together, we have them fill out a living agreement. So theoretically, they should be talking through any kind of issues that they expect to happen, and we do our best, but of course there are accommodations that can be made if it really is not a good pairing.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something to that, is that, the RAs are there, and the contract that the students sign is there to deal with meeting expectations of how you're going to live and keeping, giving each other some quiet space and so on. It doesn't, you can't adjudicate being best friends. I think that a lot of students, particularly in the beginning, think, my roommate has to be my best friend and we have to get along. You really just have to learn to live together. And what will happen in the beginning, the roommate seems so important that, we're going to just really go every place together and like each other. It's okay if they can just get along enough. And the best friends will come elsewhere. Sometimes roommates do end up being best friends. Other times, they're just sharing a room, respect each other, and that can be enough. There are lots of other students to connect with. And often it's surprising, the roommates who start out, who are so different from each other, really learn from each other and end up being very close. So it'll be interesting to see what you hear those first couple of weeks, but remember, it's just the beginning.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. My colleague, I think is that Tim, I can't see. It is Tim, has a mic, so if anybody has, do we have any questions? We got one right here.
So I'm going to purchase medical insurance for my daughter.
If you say the question, I'll repeat it. Oh, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to purchase medical insurance for my daughter through the university. My question is it going to cover the time she is at home for holidays?
You want to answer that,
Yeah,
Dr. LeBlanc?
Dr. LeBlanc, you want to? Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes.
Yes.
That was easy. I love that. Okay, we got one over here. Hold on, we're going to get this one right here. Yep.
Hi. I've heard that over the fall break, campus clears out. So for students who come from far away, do they find themselves sort of lost and with nobody here? You know, if you could speak to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that also. So yeah, like I said, I'm from Mexico City, so it wasn't always feasible for me to go home every break. I've stayed here both Thanksgiving breaks, and that's when it really clears out. But I found it to be very pleasant. Fall break, there's still quite a few students on campus. Also spring break, although not as many. But Thanksgiving definitely clears out. But I found it to be a very nice break to just like relax and explore campus and explore St. Louis on my own without having kind of like, I wouldn't say the pressure, but the pressure of like having to go out with friends. So if your student is here during a break where most students leave, I found it to be a super nice break. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
And I will just add, thank you, Mao. So the university and the residence halls in particular are open today, and they will be open through commencement. So that includes Thanksgiving break, winter break, spring break, fall break. Fall break at Washington University is the shortest of the breaks. It's basically a 4-day weekend. I don't remember what the dates are this year, but it's like the third week of October. And we try our best to collect data on how many people leave every year and how many stay. I would actually say about a third to half of the students stay for fall break, so that's a pretty significant number. All the dining hours, stay open, and there are activities that happen on campus around that. But as Mao said, what I normally hear from students that stay is they are relieved because it's right in the middle of the semester, and they're able to catch up either on sleep or studying for midterms, or they're able to do some of those things in St. Louis they haven't had time to do yet, and they find a friend or two to do that with. So
yeah, oftentimes breaks like those are right during midterms. So I find that a lot of my friends who do go home end up spending time with family or friends, and they don't have time to study, and they come back and I'm like, I did.
Okay.
There's one right here.
Yeah, Tim, we got. Oh, sorry, you were waiting. Let's go here, and then we'll go down here. So,
I was really just going to follow up on the fall break thing to see if there was a recommendation in this whole letting go. Yeah, so my daughter thinks she really wants to come home from fall break, that really seems far away from now, and she'll be homesick and want to come home. And then we're hearing a lot of kids don't. Do you have a recommendation? Is it better for them to kind of wait until Thanksgiving or maybe the parent weekend to see us? Or is 8 weeks fine for them to come home, fly home, and visit?
I think it depends on, first of all, your student. But I would think that if you live far away and they have to get on a plane and fly, I think it's fine to stay here because there are plenty of people around. I mean, Thanksgiving is more challenging in terms of the percentage of students who go home. And even that, very often, local students will invite the students who are from far away to come for Thanksgiving, or faculty or some of the deans even have Thanksgiving dinners. But in terms of fall break, for those of you who live pretty far away and it's another airplane flight, I think if your daughter can stick it out, she'll find that she'll have friends who will be here too.
I forgot to add on faculty. Last year I stayed over Thanksgiving, and there was just me and one other person in our entire building, which houses 96 people. And each building has like faculty associates or faculty fellows. And our faculty associate invited us to have Thanksgiving dinner over at her house. So yeah, faculty is also a really nice resource.
All right, we're going to come here, Tim, and then back here, okay? Sorry.
So how does the university handle roommate conflicts that involve more serious things other than, personal, preferences, things like maybe a roommate may be so stressed, he may start using substances or experimenting, and it becomes a very tense, maybe possibly unsafe situation without making the roommate situation more hostile?
You want me to take that? Okay, that's a great question, and those are difficult situations. So these two wonderful resident advisors here, RAs, we call them, are supervised by residential college directors. We call them RCDs. You hear us say that really fast. They are full-time professional staff. Some of you may have met them moving in today, who live and work in the residential colleges. And so when the more serious roommate situations arise, what will usually happen is the resident advisors will let their residential college director know, and every situation is a little bit different. Sometimes we do end up moving people in the middle of the year just because we decide that there's not a resolvable way to resolve the conflict, and especially if somebody is suffering mental health consequences as a result of a roommate situation. As Dr. White said too, we always do try to, help the student. The best thing that you can do for us is encourage your student to take the lead on trying to resolve it. And we will be very open to working with them. Sometimes it gets trickier when families are involved. But, if it is a very serious situation, I talk to a handful of families every year myself, and my colleagues do in residential life. Thank you.
And there's two really important parts to your question. One is, let's say it's your student whose roommate is exhibiting the behaviors that you just described. So certainly we want to support your student, making sure that they're not in an unhealthy living situation. And then there's the student who might be struggling with some things that we're concerned about. We've got a program called WashU Cares, which is coordinated out of Dr. Dewar's area. And WashU Cares brings together members of our campus community from the counseling center, from the academic offices, from residential life and student housing, and some other key support areas on campus to identify students that we might be concerned about that have been referred to us either by an RA or an RCD, and then together figure out what is it that we need to do to make sure we can get that student the support that they need to be successful here. So we've got all kinds of ways to both support the student who might be in a troubled roommate situation and the roommate who might be struggling with some issues.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just received an email saying my son missed one dose of the immunization. Is there any place in campus he can get it?
Yep, you want me to take that one? So the question is, you just received an email that your son needs an immunization, and is there any place on campus that he can get it? Is that the question? Yep. So yes is the answer to that. So the email you got was probably from Dr. LeBlanc and her team. And we are open today until 6, until 5, and then tomorrow.
The health center's not open tomorrow. It'll be open again on Monday.
We'll be open again on Monday. And all the immunizations that the student is requested in the email will be able to get on site. We have our nursing staff ready to do that quickly. So, and the question, our health service is located right on the South 40 on the garden level of Dardick, and so right there. And someone's got a question back here. I heard a voice.
Yeah, I did too. We just
can't.
can't see from up here.
Yeah. Tim, someone's running over, and here she comes. Yes.
Hi, I actually had two questions, but the first one is for the police chief down there. Do you discuss with the students where it's safe to walk off campus? I had heard, we did that beautiful walk to the Del Mar Loop, and then later heard from a current parent that she would discourage, I have a daughter, even her son from walking through that little backyard portal area on her own, even during the day, for fear of maybe having somebody from outside, see that she has a backpack full of goodies.
So, again, we have a contingent of officers that work off campus with University City and St. Louis City in those areas. I'm assuming what you're talking about is the Greenway Walk, which is the sidewalk that goes from campus right to Del Mar Loop. We patrol that daily. In fact, in the afternoon and evening time during the busiest time, we have 2 security officers 7 days a week that are on that walkway until 2 in the morning, just walking back and forth. It's also well lit. There's blue light phones that if there's an emergency, they press it goes right to the police agency. So we work, again, really close with University City to make sure that we're supplementing their police service into those areas. We rarely have incidents on the Greenway Walk, but again, we're an urban environment. We are going to see street crime that happens, but we do have a very robust response system to handle that, working with University City. The incidents that we've had in the past, we've cleared up fairly quickly. And we take great pride in making sure that that's a safe travel area to and from the road.
Yep. You have the
Academic
second question? Yep. Go ahead.
So my daughter would rather chew off her arm than tell me that she can't handle her course load. And she's very ambitious, right? So she was, she took the max courses that she's allowed to take. Does anybody check in with the students and say, hey, deadlines are coming up. If you feel like you're struggling, maybe you might want to think about looking at your schedule and backing off this very first semester?
Your student has an academic advisor, and that would be, I think, the first place where that conversation would likely to occur. Students required to meet with their academic advisor at least once a semester, and I would hope most students are meeting with their advisors more frequently. We have one of the best advising programs in the country, and that's based on student feedback, not me just saying that. And so I would encourage, when you talk with your daughter, if you know that she may not share that with you, to make sure that she's checking in regularly with her advisor. Students, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I really agree. My four-year advisor has been extremely helpful for me all these years that I've been here. And also, as we mentioned earlier, your students will also have WUSAs who will serve as academic mentors for them, and they really do a good job of checking in on them. And as we said, they will see your student at least once a week. So it'll be a good checkpoint just to make sure everything is going well as the semester progresses.
And our faculty is also amazing. They'll approach the student if they see them struggling and offer resources, extra TA hours. TA are teacher assistants, and basically every class here has at least one teaching assistant. So they'll offer extra hours. Different schools have different programs for mentoring, but yeah, there's a lot of resources.
And now you have me worried for your daughter, so I should also tell you that there is a drop deadline by which all students can drop courses on their schedule. I don't know, I think it's probably September 6th. Yeah. It's usually the Friday of the second week of classes, but I think I'm looking at Amy, she's nodding around that, so yes.
Oh, the question is, are there any tests before the drop
deadline? Are there
deadline?
tests before the drop deadline? Usually not. But okay, so we need to wrap this up. I will be sticking around. I think my colleagues here in the front can stick around for a few minutes. I wanted to end with two things. One is to say, in this room, right after this session at 5:30, my colleague Mark Smith is going to be doing a session for the Career Center, which is a great session. I encourage you to stick around and if you have questions about internships and career advising and those kinds of things. And then I'm going to end by just asking Mao and Anna to each share with you one piece of parting wisdom and advice that they have for you that they wish they had had the opportunity to share with their own parents back in time when they were transitioning to WashU.
I guess for me, it was understanding, or like for my mom, understanding that I was also going through leaving her. It was not only like her losing me. So it's just kind of building a relationship of, like I said, empathy, where if I like vent at my parents, I don't want them to troubleshoot immediately. And kind of it'll take maybe a while to figure out a relationship and a schedule to talk with your students, and it's okay. Like, we understand, and at the end of the day, we know you care, and that's the feeling that we go to when we go to sleep. If my mom texted me 20 times that day because I didn't respond because I was in class, like, and I go and I see it at night, like, at the end of the day, I know that she cares. So, yeah, that's what I want to go to bed with.
I really like Dr. Coburn's metaphor of the park bench. I think it really perfectly describes the parent role in this new stage of life, I guess. I think it's really important to be there for your student if needed, but also to give them the space to make mistakes and grow from them on their own. And also, I just want to say, you guys have done such a great job raising us for the past 18 years, and we know you worked really, really hard to do so, so it's okay to also enjoy some time for yourself as well.
That's great.
All right, well, let's give our panelists a round of applause.